Listen, this is Jimmy Garoppolo's first career playoff game. And I think it's the last 37 quarterbacks' first career playoff game. I think they're 12-25 straight up. Similar record against the spread, by the way. Quarterback's first time in the postseason. It feels and looks different. And Jimmy Garoppolo does have a propensity to throw the ball to the other team. They don't always catch it, but throw the ball to the other team and give you an opportunity. Now, I think clearly the Vikings need to be full strength. If Adam Thielen, who was their most vital weapon outside of Dalvin Cook in their upset over the Saints, if he can't go, then their slim chance goes to about zero. But I can see the path for a Vikings victory. Dalvin Cook is monstrous. Jimmy Garoppolo turns the ball over. All of a sudden, you can unleash some of those Vikings pass rushers that they put on the inside instead of the outside against New Orleans and gave them a ton of trouble. And Mike Zimmer's a seasoned coach in the postseason. This is also Kyle Shanahan's first game as a head coach. And is this his first playoff game that he's been involved in since he had a 28-3 lead in a Super Bowl? And they blew it. I think it is. And so those are the types of things that would have to happen. I don't anticipate those things happening. San Francisco's a team I was way late to the party on. I doubted them all year long. Then they trounced Green Bay. Then they played New Orleans, a New Orleans style of game in New Orleans building, and beat them. They played Baltimore damn near to a tie in a monsoon. So I've got to give San Francisco credit. And unlike Baltimore, Canty, San Francisco had to play everyone in Week 17. That was, if they lost that game against Seattle, that came down to the 3-inch line, they fell all the way to the 5 seed instead of being the 1. I actually think that helps them. I think that the bye is more rest than rust because they had their biggest game of the season in Week 17. So for all those reasons, I like San Francisco in this game, but it wouldn't. Minnesota has shown enough this year that it couldn't be shocking if they go to San Francisco and pull off the upset.
No, it wouldn't be shocking, but Minnesota can't afford to get off to the start that they had against New Orleans and expect to be in this game. Because let's keep in mind, Adam Thielen had that one turnover early, and the Saints weren't able to capitalize by being able to score a touchdown. So I think that the Vikings have to be careful in terms of not turning the football over. They got to protect the ball, especially against an opportunistic San Francisco 49ers defense and a defense that's really good on the back end in terms of limiting the production in the passing game. If you couple that with the fact that the wide receivers for the Vikings are dealing with some health concerns, that to me sounds like the San Francisco 49ers employing a game plan that would load the box to stop Dalvin Cook, because that's the Vikings' best chance to be able to move the ball on offense. So when you look at these two teams, I feel like San Francisco, even though Minnesota's coming off of a huge win on the road in New Orleans, San Francisco, to me, is the more battle-tested team. If you look at the teams that they've played throughout the course of the season, they went out and down to New Orleans and won a barn burner there. They played against the Green Bay Packers, demolished them. You had the 2 games against the Seattle Seahawks, which were thriller games. One came down to overtime. One came down to the last play in regulation. So,
you had a game against Baltimore.
And you had the game against Baltimore in a monsoon. So I just feel like the competition that San Francisco has faced has prepared them for this moment to play playoff football. Because let's keep in mind, San Francisco, the last month of the season, they were competing to try to get that 1 seed, but if they ended up losing to Seattle in Week 17, you're talking about them being the 5 seed. So, in a sense, the playoffs have started for them a month ago.
And that schedule you're talking about, every single one of those games against excellent teams, Week 10 or beyond. So it's not like those were good teams. They were playing late in the year. They didn't win all those games, but you saw that level of competition. Minnesota, on the other hand, as great as they were against New Orleans, and that is going to New Orleans and beating that 13-3 Saints team is impressive. When they played the best of their competition, prior to that game, they hadn't played their best. They got beat by Green Bay both times this year. They lost to the Chiefs with Matt Moore playing quarterback. So for a lot of reasons, I do think a lot of things favor San Francisco. Also a Niners team that is getting healthier after dealing with a ton of injuries to important key pieces throughout kind of the middle portion of the season.
Well, if the Vikings did have a monkey on their back, some would say it was Kirk Cousins and how he performs on the national big stage. He got over that, some would say, last week. So maybe that's the one place where you could say, all right, Kirk Cousins could actually show up in this
Speaking, you're 100% right. He got his first career playoff victory, and he had the best throw, as Troy Aikman called it, of his entire career. If the Vikings are in this game, much less leading this game, one thing I do not want to see, and we didn't talk about it enough because they ended up winning the game, and I like Stefon Diggs a lot. Stefon Diggs was a child in that football game against the Saints. And I never do the scolding athletes thing. I understand it's an emotional game. You are in a playoff game with the lead, the biggest game for your franchise in at least 2 years, and the biggest game for your quarterback and for your teammates maybe ever, certainly for Cousins. And because you weren't getting the football, you were throwing a temper tantrum. If you're losing and not getting the football and saying, I could be helping us, that's one thing. To do it when you're winning, and then it felt like Stefanski placated him. They started running into rounds to him, getting the ball in his hands otherwise.
He had the big catch in overtime.
Absolutely, and he's a really good player. Listen, he's an excellent, excellent player. But Stefon Diggs needs to be – they need to all be pulling in the same direction if they're going to pull off what would be their biggest win they've had since the Minneapolis Miracle and the biggest upset of the playoffs thus far.
Are you and I now on the same page with wide receivers not creating problems not acting like children?
When you're winning in a playoff game,
I hope he's not wearing an expensive watch.
No, when you're winning in a playoff game, you shouldn't be worried about whether or not you're getting touches. The game was going great for the Vikings, and he was causing a show on the sideline. That I'm not a fan of.
All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.